The night Vincent threw Millicent out of their home, rain was falling hard. Her handbag was the only thing she carried as she stepped out of the door, her heart pounding with betrayal. Behind her, Vincent stood with Rhonda by his side, her lips twisted in scorn. "Leave," he spat at her, "and don't ever come back." The rain soaked Millicent's clothes as she walked into the darkness empty-handed, but she knew something that Vincent did not know. Everything in that house, from the bed he slept on to the fridge he opened every morning, had been bought with her sweat. Vincent thought he had won, but Millicent would return to take back every single thing she had bought in that house. And when she did, his pride would crumble, and his house would be left as bare as his heart. Millicent never imagined life would turn out this way. When she first met Vincent, it was at a wedding in town. She had gone reluctantly, pushed by a friend who said she needed to loosen up. Millicent was a banker who took her job seriously and had little patience for men who thought charm could replace hard work. But Vincent was different, or so it seemed. He had an easy smile, a deep laugh that rolled from his chest, and a confidence that would make you believe him even when you shouldn't. He told her about his cold room business, a roadside business, selling frozen fish and chicken. It didn't sound like much, but when Vincent spoke about it, his eyes shone like he was talking about an empire. "I will expand my cold room business sooner than you think," he said proudly that night, handing her a glass of Chapman. "In 5 years, Millicent, people will be lining up to buy frozen meat and fish from me. I will have delivery vans and a very big warehouse, you'll see." Millicent found herself smiling. There was something intoxicating about a man who dreamed boldly. She had her own dreams too, but they were grounded and solid. She had worked her way into the banking sector, rented her own apartment, and even bought a small car on a loan. She wasn't very rich, but she was stable. For months after, Vincent courted her with sweet words and playful banter. He never once mentioned that he expected his wife to quit her job. On the contrary, he praised her independence. "You are not like other women," he would say. "You know how to hustle, and I respect that." Millicent believed him. And when they finally got married, she imagined they would build a home on mutual respect, his business, her career, and their combined strength and effort. But marriage, she would learn, was nothing like courtship. Their first apartment was modest, a 2-bedroom flat in a decent neighborhood. It wasn't grand, but Millicent didn't mind. She filled it with warmth, buying curtains for the house, chairs for the living room, and a queen-sized bed for their bedroom. She painted the walls soft cream and made sure the kitchen had everything they needed. Vincent's cold room brought in money, but not enough to fund their lifestyle. Some weeks he barely sold anything, and other weeks he made just enough to cover his own expenses. It was Millicent who shouldered the weight of providing for the home and making sure they never lacked anything. She paid the rent. She stocked the fridge with groceries. She bought a new generator when the landlord complained about the excessive noise from their old one. When their friends visited, Vincent would always boast. "Look at this place," he would say, tapping the glass center table. "I told Millicent I wanted something classy, and she delivered with no questions asked." Millicent never corrected him. She only smiled politely, though she knew he had not contributed any kobo for the house upkeep. One evening, after she returned home from work very exhausted, Vincent sat her down. "Millicent," he began slowly, "don't you think it's time you resigned?" Her fork froze halfway to her mouth. "Resigned? From my job at the bank? Why?" He cleared his throat. "A wife's place is in the home. I am the man. I should be the one working." Millicent stared at him, incredulous. "And what would we live on, Vincent? Your cold room business? Let's be realistic. If I stop working, who will pay the rent? Who will buy food for the home? You know your business isn't stable yet." He clenched his teeth and asked, "So you're saying I'm not man enough to provide for you?" "I am saying we need both our incomes to survive for now. The economy isn't smiling," she replied firmly. The argument ended in silence, but from that night, resentment began to creep into their home. 2 years passed, and there was no sign of pregnancy. At first, Millicent wasn't worried. They were still young, still settling into marriage and partnership. But soon Vincent's mother began making side comments. Relatives stopped asking, "How is marriage?" and started asking, "When will you give us a child?" Vincent changed totally. He stopped laughing easily. He stopped touching her with the same warmth. Sometimes, when he came home from the cold room, he wouldn't even greet her. He would only collapse onto the sofa with a scowl. One Sunday afternoon, during a family gathering, Vincent's mother spoke loudly enough for Millicent to hear. A woman who can't give her husband a child is not a wife. She's just a visitor in the home. Millicent felt really hurt by those words, and as she fought back tears, she wanted to remind them that she was the one keeping the roof over their heads, but she bit her tongue. That night, lying beside Vincent, she whispered, "Maybe we should see a doctor. Both of us. Just to check and make sure we are both okay medically." But Vincent turned away, his voice sharp. "There's nothing wrong with me. If there's a problem, it's definitely you." Millicent curled into herself, staring at the ceiling until dawn. One Friday evening, Millicent returned from work to find a stranger sitting in her living room. A young woman with bold eyes and painted lips, reclining on the sofa Millicent had bought with her hard-earned money. "Good evening," Millicent said cautiously, setting down her bag on the couch beside her. The woman smirked mockingly. "Evening. I am Rhonda, Vincent's new wife." Millicent blinked, thinking she had misheard. New wife? Just then, Vincent walked in, smelling of beer. He draped an arm around Rhonda casually and said, "Yes. She's staying with us from now on." Millicent's knees wobbled. "Vincent, what are you saying? You brought another woman into our home without telling me." He shrugged and replied, "I need a real wife. Someone who can give me children." Her world spun, but she swallowed her pride. She told herself she would manage, that maybe the storm would pass. But Rhonda had no intention of coexisting peacefully. She insulted Millicent at every turn. She picked fights over petty things. She sneered when Millicent dressed for work. One morning, as Millicent ironed her blouse, Rhonda scoffed. "You are wasting your time. Men don't marry women who run to offices every day. You think you're better than everyone just because you earn a salary." Millicent ignored her, but inside, she was crumbling. One evening, Millicent was in the kitchen frying plantain when Rhonda barged in. "Why didn't you wash the bathroom?" Rhonda snapped. Millicent sighed and replied, "Rhonda, please, I am very tired. I just came back from work. I'll do it later." Rhonda shoved her shoulder and screamed, "You must do it now." The hot oil splashed, burning Millicent's hand. She cried out in pain. Vincent rushed in, but instead of helping her, he turned on Millicent. "You are a very useless woman," he roared. "You can't give me children. You can't even keep peace in my home. Now get out." Millicent stared at him in shock, clutching her burnt hand. "Vincent, are you serious? You are throwing me out? After everything?" "Leave my house," he shouted, pointing to the door. Rhonda stood behind him, smirking. And just like that, Millicent walked out into the rain, carrying nothing but her handbag. 2 days after Vincent threw Millicent out, he lounged on the sofa with Rhonda beside him, feeling triumphant. The apartment was still filled with the furniture Millicent had bought. The couch, the glass table, the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Vincent leaned back, his hands behind his head. "She will be back," Rhonda said lazily, filing her nails. "They always come crawling." Vincent smirked. "Not Millicent. She's too proud for a woman." That afternoon, the compound gate rattled open. A green army truck rolled in, followed by another smaller truck. Soldiers in full uniform climbed down, their boots heavy on the ground. Millicent stepped out of a car behind them. She wore a neat navy blue dress, her hair tied back. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sharp as glass. Vincent shot to his feet. "Millicent, what is all this?" She didn't answer. She turned to the soldiers and said, "We will start here." They filed in, efficiently, and within minutes they began carrying out the furniture, the sofa, the bed, the dining table. Rhonda sprang up. "Hey, you can't take that. This is my house." Millicent turned to her with icy precision. "Did you buy a single thing here? That gas cooker? That fridge? Those curtains? I bought them all. With my hard-earned money." Vincent's face reddened. "Millicent, you better stop this madness." She faced him squarely. "Madness? You threw me out like trash, Vincent. But you forgot one thing, the fact that I built this home. Every plate, every spoon, every chair. And I will not leave my sweat behind." Neighbors peered through windows, whispering, pointing. By the time the trucks were loaded, the apartment was bare. No bed, no fridge, no curtains, just cracked walls and Vincent's shame. Millicent dusted her palms and said quietly, "Good luck with your new wife, Vincent." And then, she left. The weeks that followed were hard. Millicent stayed with a colleague while she found her footing again. Her hands still bore the oil burn from that night in the kitchen, but she carried herself to work every morning with her head high. At the bank, no one knew the full story. They only saw her as the efficient officer who smiled at customers, who balanced ledgers, and dressed impeccably. No one saw the nights she cried herself to sleep, replaying Vincent's betrayal over and over. But Millicent refused to crumble. She poured herself into her career, volunteering for projects, staying back late to learn. By the end of the year, she was promoted. Her salary increased, and with it came her independence. One evening, as she settled into her new apartment, one she had furnished carefully with the items she had taken back, she stood by the window and whispered, "Never again. Never again will I give everything to a man who gives nothing back." 2 years later, Millicent was sponsored by her bank to attend a training program in Abuja. It was during that training program that Millicent met Joshua. He was calm and a good listener. He worked in telecommunications. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with an easy smile that reached his eyes. On the first day of training, he held the door open for her. "After you," he said warmly. She smiled politely, not thinking much of it. But as the weeks passed, they found themselves paired on assignments, sitting together during breaks, talking about life outside work. One evening, after a long session, Joshua walked her to her car. "Millicent," he said gently, "I like how you carry yourself. Like someone who has been through fire, but refuses to burn." The words hit her like a secret he shouldn't have known. She looked at him sharply, but he held her gaze. "Forgive me if I'm too forward," he added quickly. She found herself smiling as she replied, "You are not wrong." Joshua pursued her steadily, but Millicent was cautious. She told him bits of her past, enough for him to understand why her guard was very high. He listened to her, never judging her, never rushing anything. "Not all men are Vincent," Joshua said one evening over dinner. "Some of us know the worth of a good woman, and we won't mess it up." Millicent studied him. The sincerity in his tone disarmed her. Slowly, the walls she had built over the years began to lower. By the time they returned to Lagos, their friendship had blossomed into something deeper and intimate. 2 years later, Joshua proposed to her. This time, Millicent walked down the aisle with no fear in her chest. Her heart was steady, her steps sure. She had chosen a man who saw her not as a housemaid, not as a baby factory, but as a partner. Together, they built a life of laughter and stability. A few months later, children began to come. Over the years, they had 2 boys and a girl. Each with Joshua's calm smile, Millicent flourished. She rose to senior management at the bank. She owned her own properties and traveled widely. Her past with Vincent became a shadow she no longer feared. Until, 20 years later, the phone rang. She almost didn't answer. It was a Saturday afternoon. She was baking with her daughter when her phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar. "Hello," she said, wiping flour from her hands. A voice, frail and broken, whispered, "Millicent, it's me. Vincent." Her heart jolted. She almost dropped the phone. "I need to see you," the voice rasped. "Please, before I die." Millicent's first instinct was to hang up. The years fell away, and she was back in that rain-soaked night, walking out of his house with nothing. She clenched her jaw, but when she told Joshua later, he listened quietly, then said, "Go. Hear him out. Sometimes peace comes from closing old doors." Millicent shook her head. "Why should I? He doesn't deserve it." Joshua took her hand and said, "Maybe not. But closure isn't for him. It's for you." The hospital garden was quiet that evening. The scent of hibiscus lingered in the air, and the faint hum of generators came from the nearby wards. Millicent walked slowly, her hand tucked into Joshua's. She had almost turned back twice on the way, but Joshua's steady grip anchored her. Then she saw him. Vincent sat on a bench, hunched, thin as a shadow. His skin had grown sallow, his cheeks hollow. The man who once strutted with pride now looked like a leaf in harmattan, brittle and ready to fall. When his eyes met hers, tears welled instantly. He struggled to his feet, his legs trembling. Then, with a groan, he dropped to his knees. "Millicent," he said with a shaky voice. "Please forgive me." Millicent froze. The sight of him on his knees, the same man who once cast her into the rain without pity, shook her. Memories crashed in. The night he pointed to the door, Rhonda's smirk, the pain of leaving her home with nothing but her handbag. Joshua stepped forward, his presence strong but silent. He didn't touch Vincent. He didn't interfere. He just stood by Millicent, letting her know she wasn't alone. Vincent bowed his head, sobbing. I was a fool. A blind fool. I thought Rhonda was a blessing, but she destroyed me. She treated me like dirt, Millicent. She insulted me, starved me, and brought men into my home. My home. His voice filled with regret, and I couldn't do anything. Now, the doctor says I don't have much time left. Millicent's lips parted, but no words came. Vincent crawled closer, clutching at the hem of her dress. I lost a good woman. The best thing that ever happened to me. And I traded you for ashes. His chest heaved with sobs. Please, forgive me. I don't want to die carrying this weight. The garden was still. The air, thick with things unsaid. Millicent's heart pounded. For years she had imagined this moment. She had dreamed of him begging, of his pride crumbling, of her triumph. But standing there, she felt no triumph. Only a hollow ache. She studied the man on the ground, his hands shaking, his voice broken. This was not the Vincent she once loved. This was a ghost of him. She thought of the nights she had cried herself to sleep, of the burn on her hand from hot oil, of walking in the rain with nothing. She thought of the day she returned with soldiers and stripped the apartment bare. She thought of the years she rebuilt herself, brick by brick, until she no longer needed him. Finally, she spoke. Vincent. Her voice was low, but steady. You threw me away. You made me feel worthless. And yet, here I stand. I have a husband who honors me. Children who love me. A life I built from the ruins you left behind. Vincent lifted his head, tears streaming down his gaunt face. Millicent took a slow breath. I don't owe you forgiveness. But I will not carry hatred either. I forgave you long ago, not for you, but for me. Life has already punished you more than I ever could. Vincent broke into loud sobs, pressing his forehead to the ground. Joshua placed a hand gently on Millicent's shoulder. She straightened, her face calm. Come, Joshua, she said softly. Together, they walked away, leaving Vincent kneeling in the dust of his own regret. 2 weeks later, Millicent's phone rang again. This time it was Vincent's brother. He is gone, the man said quietly. Millicent sat still, her phone pressed to her ear. No tears came. No smile either. Just a deep exhale, like closing the last page of a long, bitter book. That evening, Joshua found her on the balcony, staring at the sky. He sat beside her, slipping his arm around her shoulders. Do you feel lighter? He asked gently. She nodded. Yes, it's finished now. She leaned against him, her eyes closing. For the first time in decades, the ghost of Vincent no longer haunted her. The news of Vincent's death spread quickly in their old neighborhood. Some said it was karma. Others shook their heads, muttering that no man should have brought such disgrace upon himself. Rhonda was nowhere to be found. She had abandoned Vincent long before his sickness consumed him, leaving him to rot in the same apartment Millicent once stripped bare. Millicent did not attend the burial. She had no reason to. Her closure had come in the garden that day. Instead, she spent the weekend with her family. She baked with her daughter, listened to her sons argue over football, and laughed at Joshua's dry jokes. In her heart, she whispered a quiet truth. I survived. I rebuilt. And I won.
Please like this video, share and subscribe to our channel. It truly means a lot to us as we bring you powerful African revenge and betrayal stories every week.